18 months ago, my grandmother took me to a village. I was 14 at the time. That's my grandmother. 50 years have passed since her last return, and so it goes without saying that for her, going back was special. Taking her grandchildren was important. My brother, my sister, my cousin, and I. She said that the village would be beautiful, and she said being at the village would feel like home. I never understood what she meant until we arrived. To be completely honest, I wasn't as excited as my grandmother wanted me to be. Whenever I heard the word village, at the time, the first thing that came to my head was dirty. Hearing that the village was on a remote island, all I could think of was muddy grounds, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, and a lot of insects. And those images kept racing through my mind on a loop, so I wasn't too enthusiastic about it. Access to the village is via boat, and I thought at least the boat ride would be fun, but I was wrong. It was an overcast day, the waves were bumpy and rough, the boat was small, I was sitting on the floor in an uncomfortable position, and it got worse 5 minutes into the boat ride. I got seasick, and I leaned over the side and started vomiting. I looked to my left and saw my 12-year-old sister vomiting, and that grossed me out, so I vomited more, and then she vomited more. So there was a lot of vomiting, and I was, obviously having the time of my life. So to recap my situation, I'm vomiting because I'm seasick, while on a boat that's on its way to the dirty village where I'll have to walk through muddy grounds, be greeted by a million breeds of insects, and eventually be eaten alive by mosquitoes. When we got there, everyone was very welcoming, but I was still a bit loopy from being seasick, so my attention span was pretty much zero. So far, I'm overwhelmed, and it's not going as great as grandmother said. All I wanted was for time to go faster and to get out of this village as soon as possible. But that all changed the next day. My family organized a little tour of the other side of the island, where there's no houses, no huts, just nature. And it was too far to walk, so we had to catch the boat again. I obviously didn't want to, considering my last experience, but I had to go. While everyone was boarding the boat, one of the men noticed the gaunt look on my face. He didn't let me stay, of course, but instead he said, "You can sit on the roof if you want." As soon as he spoke that sentence, I didn't hesitate to climb straight to the roof and sit at the front, holding onto the two bars of the roof. As soon as the boat took off, the wind hit my face and carried my hair off my shoulders as if lifting yesterday's experience. And I opened my eyes to a brand new view. And I felt so much better. And all I could see was the ocean. It had different shades of blue, bits of jade, and it was really beautiful. And that was my moment, the moment when I made my first connection with the ocean. It was in that moment my grandmother's words of her village, her vanua, her land, finally aligned within me. What I felt was a sense of belonging in a foreign place that I've never been to before. It's kind of hard to explain, but I knew I'd made my connection with the ocean. Almost like an activation of my genealogy, because even though I've never been there before, I felt like I've had. But this surreal experience was only the beginning. The day after that, there was a huge welcoming, and everyone at the village came. My brother, my sister, and cousin and I were wrapped in mats and given a tumbua each, which is a whale's tooth, and perhaps one of the most valuable of all traditional Fijian objects. We all sat in a straight line under a tent on a mat, while the rest of the village was a few feet away from us watching the ceremony commence. Then another man came who had a tumbua as well, sat next to us. He said something in Fijian, which I didn't understand, but it was a very special moment. After his prayer, the village presented us a huge pig as a feast, which my undecided vegetarian sister kept apologizing to, and other foods as a welcoming gift. While eating the food, a couple of people performed a variety of different dances. Everyone was smiling and laughing, and overall, it was a really awesome day. But the best part about that day was feeling comfortable and at ease amongst all these people whose faces I didn't recognize and names that I didn't know. And that was the moment when I knew the home-like feeling that grandmother was talking about. A parallel journey began to unfold as my time went on in Vatulele, because grandmother's stories were becoming realizations for me. And everything that she's always talked about was getting clearer. When I thought that I had finally understood everything, there turned out to be more. And it was when I saw a man catch a fish. Yeah, it probably sounds simple because people catch fish every day, but this is just slightly different. My first fishing experience in Sydney, I caught a fish, because that's what you do when you go fishing. And we had to throw the fish back in the water. What I thought we would do would be to nicely take the hook out of the fish's mouth and then toss or just place it back in the water. Instead, the fish's face was stepped on while the hook was getting ripped out of its mouth and then just kicked back into the sea. By the time the fish was back in the water, it was already dead. I was young, and I quickly assumed that's how all fish are treated when you catch them. And I feel kind of bad now because that's how I ended up treating a fish whenever I caught one. But of course, that all changed at Vatulele. I was walking along the shore when I saw a man out on the beach catching fish. I knew it was for food, so I waited for him to come back so I could watch him kill it out of interest because, throwing a fish back in the water seemed like an aggressive thing to do. I could only imagine what he would do to actually kill the fish. When he finally came back, a couple of kids and I ran up to him to watch him kill it, and it was a big fish too. But what I saw wasn't near anything that I expected. He held the fish down gently, and he said something in Fijian, and I presume he was talking to the fish. And feeling the calm atmosphere of killing this fish compared to the first was very peaceful. It was like an ancient ritual between man and the gift of the ocean was taking place in front of me. He was so quick to end the fish's life, and I've never seen someone kill a fish with some sort of dignity. And it was that one experience alone I realized the passion that my people have for the ocean. It may not sound like much, and to some, it probably just sounds like a story on how a man in Vatulele killed a fish, but to me, it was really eye-opening to the passion that my people have for the ocean. I'm a filmmaker, and my next film will be about a 15-year-old girl named Tori who comes from Fijian heritage, but has never been exposed to her culture due to living in the eastern suburbs. Later, Tori's mom receives a job opportunity, which results in moving to Western Sydney. When Tori hears this news, she gets a sudden feeling of discomfort because where she lives, Western Sydney is stereotyped as a bad and nasty place, full of thugs and junkies and etc. So moving to the West is a big and scary jump for Tori. On Tori's first day of school at Western Sydney, a girl is assigned to show Tori around the school. Her name is Atong, and she's a Sudanese 15-year-old girl, and she ends up being Tori's first friend at the school. As the days pass by, Tori realizes how diverse and tightly bonded the community is. And as time keeps going, she gains more friends, and she becomes more familiar with the community, and she realizes how wrong she and everyone else was about Western Sydney. Everything is going great until Harmony Day is close, which is a multicultural day. Everyone starts talking about what they're going to wear, what food they're going to bring, if they're going to perform a traditional dance. As soon as everyone turns to Tori to ask her, she suddenly feels disconnected again. Instead of asking her parents about her heritage, she decides to find out for herself. So with Harmony Day coming up, Tori is discovering her identity as a Fijian. That's why being in Vatulele was such a big and important experience for me. Not only did I learn and discover so many new things, but I discovered my identity as a Fijian, and that never would have happened where I live. We stayed at the village for 5 days, and I wanted to stay longer, but grandmother said, "You wouldn't last a whole week." Thanks, Grandma. But Because of my experience, my perspective on the ocean changed dramatically, and I realized how important the ocean is, and especially to everyone in Vatulele. It's their source of life, and they're at the mercy of the water. My maternal grandfather grew up on an island, so he was obviously surrounded by the sea, and their lives depended on it. Yes, they did have some food that came from the land, but that was very limited, so they depended on the ocean. My paternal grandmother spent a period of time during her childhood on an island. Again, they were surrounded by the ocean, so they depended on it. Now, a friend of my mum hasn't grown up near the ocean like my grandparents did, so her perspective is quite different. Her family appreciated the ocean just as you think anyone would on a hot summer day, but otherwise didn't have any other feelings towards it. They're indifferent to the ocean. A friend of mine moved to Sydney a couple of years ago from England, and she hates the ocean. She hates everything to do with the ocean, from fish pooing and peeing in the water to people spitting and peeing in the water. She's aloof concerning the ocean. Two perspectives on the ocean are almost the exact same because they grew up near the sea with strong connections. One is relatively naive because she hasn't spent too much time near the water, and the last is simple but negative. People swim at beaches for leisure and entertainment. They are there to get something out of it. It's a self-gain perspective, so there really isn't much of a connection for most people. I'm not saying that everyone should go to Vatulele and have the exact same experience as me, because not everyone is going to have some sort of attachment or develop a similar bond as me, or as each other, because we're all different. But to achieve a sustainable connection is to create experiential opportunities. That could mean going to your island of heritage. It may not. But for the sake of creating a bit more understanding, to develop and flourish, anchoring us in what we're connected to, then we have a chance at sustainable practices. In this context, I'm speaking about the ocean. I acknowledge that the ocean is a living organism filled with population, just like the Vanua, the land, and this parallel narrative has allowed for new core values to be embedded in me. For those like me who have the opportunity to venture out to their village on a boat, I encourage you to do so. For those who don't, which path in your timeline or interest do you have that you can nurture to really gain your sense of belonging? That despite your transitions, what interest do you have that makes you feel most at home? Because whatever it may be, a sense of belonging allows a sense of purpose to grow. Once we understand how important the ocean is to everyone here in Fiji and around the Pacific, then we can each play a part in taking care of it and in turn, caring for the lives that depend on it. The ocean cannot speak for herself, so I choose to be a mouthpiece for her. The sea is the source of life for the majority of our population, and it's always there. It's there when you want to go fishing with your family. It's there to give access to each other and to keep our loved ones connected. Yes, there are airplanes and helicopters, but other islands around this world are much too small for that. So what's there to help you? The ocean. It's there to help you cool down on a hot summer day. It's there to catch a vomit when you're feeling seasick. And it's there for the roof of the boat that you're riding while feeling on top of the world. The ocean is there. It's here and it's surrounding all of us. Taking it for granted and continued ignorance is no longer an excuse for this day and age. I'm confident that if we trace back a few generations, we'd find our forefathers share a common narrative in sailing the ocean. I could only imagine the untold stories our great Pacific Ocean holds of our own histories. Sometimes we feel like there isn't a lot we can do to help, but if everyone got involved, then the little things, like not littering, would be the first step to a better and healthier ocean. The only way to help is if we all get up and take action. Thank you.